When did you start working and living in Lamoni?
Well, I started working officially for Graceland. All right, so there's definitions to be involved here. My first job for Graceland was the summer of 1971 when I worked on the paint crew for facility services. It was just a summer job.
Oh, wow.
I had just gotten married, and I had $50 and a summer job, and that's all I had. So that was my first job for Graceland. But I started working full-time for Graceland in 1977.
When did you start, so you lived here?
So I came to school in 1969 and got married in 1971. And so when I got married, we, of course, lived here. My wife's parents live here in Lamoni, and so we stayed here. And we were married for a couple years, and I grew up in Detroit. We moved back to Detroit for a couple years. I had grown up there, but had grown to love this place a lot more than there. So we moved back here in '74, and I've been here ever since.
So, I guess in this case, what is the reason you decided to come back to Lamoni? Why do you love it so much here?
Coming from Detroit, Detroit's, I think, still even kind of a mean place. I wouldn't call it friendly by any means, and I came here and was real impressed with not only the Graceland community, but the Iowa community as well, and just a lot more pleasant place to be. So not only were the people more accepting and inviting, but there weren't as many people, and I liked the more rural environment too. So those two things. Plus, family was here. My wife has two sisters that live here in Lamoni, and her parents live here too.
What is your favorite part about working at Graceland?
Oh, well, that's easy. It's the community. It's probably what you would answer if I ask you what's your favorite part about Graceland, right? I think Graceland is a fairly accepting, welcoming. It's a really unique place to have a place like Graceland in this tiny little town. It's just a really unique environment. It's a combination of rural and really cool, sophisticated stuff. It's just everything you really could want to experience in community you can here, I think.
If you won the lottery, would you choose to leave Lamoni? If not, what would keep you here?
That's a good question. I would probably have a place elsewhere, and especially on a day like today, where it's 17 degrees or something like that. It'd be nice to have a place in Hawaii or Tahiti or something. Although one of the first things I would do is probably help with some of Graceland's building projects. But yeah, I'd probably always have a place here, but I would probably have other places that I could go to as well.
And then how would you describe Lamoni to people unfamiliar to the area?
Here's a good example. My brother grew up in Detroit. He didn't come to Graceland. He's lived in large cities, San Francisco. He's lived in Seattle for many, many years. And a good number of years ago, he came and stayed for a while. We were driving around Lamoni, and you know how in Lamoni you greet people and you wave, even in people you don't know in your cars. And I waved to somebody while he was riding, and he panicked. He said, "Don't do that! They're going to come and get us." It's just such a different environment where people matter. In those larger places where it's impersonal and so many people tend to not matter. The way I would say it is that if you want a place where you matter, this is it.
Whenever you lived here and you went to school at Graceland, what are some very fond memories that you have of just Graceland, and then we'll go on.
Okay, I'll start with the first one that came to my mind was when I met my wife. The student center's being renovated now, and I can take you over there now and show you the place I was sitting in the main room when she came up and introduced herself to me. If she were here, she'd tell you that she had a girlfriend who had been attracted to me. I didn't know this at the time, but And so she had seen me and knew of me, and I didn't know her at all. And she came up to me in the main room. I'd been playing ping pong, which was my major at the time. I'm joking. I played a lot of ping pong in Graceland. She came up to me and she said, "Hi, you don't know me, but I know you." And then she proceeded to tell me who she was, and she was just beautiful. I just couldn't believe she was talking to me. That was certainly one of my favorite things at Graceland or Lamoni. And so anyway, that's that. I have lots of memories of my kids being here. I'm kind of sorry that there's a plan to get rid of the pool, because my kids and I spent a lot of time in the swimming pool when they were little. And
is there anything that has stuck out to you while you've worked at Graceland?
so highlights. I got to work with some just legends at Graceland, faculty members, and that now you would think they were ancient history at Graceland, but and rightly so. I got to work with the Higdon family. Both Bill and Barbara were presidents twice while I was here at Graceland. I got to work with Frank Huff. I got to work with Paul Edwards, he's from down your way, Paul. Just people that meant a lot. Delmer Good, some historical figures here at Graceland. I also, some things that I was able to do while I was Director of Facility Services, we renovated at Higdon Administration, actually it was just called the Ad Building up until it turned 100 years old, and when it turned 100, we renovated that building. And so, that's the icon. Every piece of mail that you get has the tower on it, and so I was honored to be able to be part of that. I helped with some of the design features and worked with the architect, and that's certainly a high point for me. And there were other things like that I was able to be part of.
Okay, what are your favorite activities that the school puts on, like for the students?
Well, so I always loved the plays, that the Graceland produced plays. That was always great. Always, especially they used to have this was when we still had a winter term. Winter term was a really, in my estimation, I'm sorry that went by the wayside too, but it was a month-long program during January. And they would have a class on one-act plays, and the students would write one-act plays and actually perform those. So that was really cool. And then, all the other plays, I think that's amazing. And I've gotten to see, my daughter was in one of those, and my granddaughter was in one of those Graceland plays. So I like that. I always liked all the music stuff. I'm a musician, and I like that stuff.
To you, what makes Graceland unique?
The community, really. And I think, especially in the student area, I haven't been a student for many, many years, but I do know that in programming and things that Graceland does in every regard, the community is an important element that's considered. It's not secondary. It's a primary thing. So it's maybe a little trite, but your house system, is community programming on steroids. And one of the things that attracted me most about Graceland was the house system when I was getting ready to go to school, because I was looking at schools where they had fraternities, and that whole thing was not something that I liked the idea of, where you had to go ask to be part of it, and then they might or might not accept you. Totally counter to things that Graceland would do, So, and that whole spirit of community, I think, is pretty broadly held. Faculty, administrators, staff. I think everybody kind of buys into that. So that's what I think is pretty extraordinary.